Hey, everybody. You're listening to the Cosmic Dispatch. I'm your host, Corey Nakasue, and with me today is Joselia Hughes. We're going to be talking about Leo, um, the archetype, the experience of it, the astrology of it, the way that Leo energy is at work in the larger world and maybe expressed through our individual selves, our lives, our feelings, what we're concerned about. This is Leo season part 2. I recorded and released Leo season part 1 a couple days ago. And if you're interested in looking at the forecast for August for Leo season, you can go back to that episode and you'll get a forecast plus kind of a breakdown of Mercury retrograde, since Mercury retrograde in Leo is going to be super prominent in August. Like really important. So I really felt like I needed to share, some ideas about what those retrograde periods are all about. So if you want to listen to the forecast, you can go there. But Joselia and I are going to take a deeper dive into Leo. And because I don't believe you can just look at one sign ever, it's always about an axis. So we're going to be talking about the conversation that Leo and Aquarius have together. To just talk about Leo would be like trying to analyze like a quarter and just look at like one side of the quarter. Like it there's a back to every front and a front to every back. They're a they're a combined experience. You can't really feel Leo without thinking about Aquarius and vice versa. And both Joselia and I have Leo Aquarius oppositions in our chart. And so, we're going to talk about some of those experiences. Also, in that part 1 episode, like housekeeping stuff, I have some workshops coming up. I have some ongoing classes. There are going to be published articles coming up in August, and you can look down at the show notes to access all of that information, or just hop on to the episode I did a couple of days ago if you want to listen to all of that. Um, I'm sorry, I just got there's a fly. So it's summer and it's a very loud fly. I'm gonna try to focus. So Joselia Hughes, um, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Corey, for having me here. I'm Joselia Hughes. I'm a writer, artist, editor, educator. I'm currently in grad school, and that's really intense. I'm a Leo with an Aquarius rising. And yeah, I love the written word and communication, where writing shows up, where reading shows up, and how to read situations, text, people, events, everything.
Okay, and I know you because I'm in a process with a group of artists. And this past winter, you joined us for it was too short, like 2 or 3 days. And I really just loved that, even that brief amount of time that I got to work with you. And then, that led me to looking at some of your work. You're a co-editor for
Apig Journal,
yeah,
uh, the poetry co-editor.
okay. Well, what are some of the things that Apogee really looks at?
Apogee really looks for work that sort of exists in the margins but is central. We look for work from incarcerated writers, writers encountering various genocides, writers thinking through race, gender, class, citizenship, boundaries. We're looking for writers that push language. We're looking for writers that We look for and publish writers that are really, really engaged with the spirit of being alive together and how to create maps and mechanisms and techniques that allow us to be alive together.
Oh, that's so interesting. Like in the first sentence of describing Apig Journal, you said it's about what's central and what's in the margins. And that's already, we're starting to speak some Leo Aquarius language. And the name, it's how did you arrive at the name? Or if you know this, maybe the name
Yeah,
Apogee.
1 second. I
Okay.
just want, I like always kind of blank on the meaning, and uh I feel embarrassed to not know this off the top, but apogee by definition is the farthest or highest point or a culmination, um, which really it's the point or in the orbit of an object such as a satellite orbiting the Earth that is at the greatest distance from the center of the Earth. Also, the farthest point from a planet or satellite, such as the moon, reached by an object or orbiting it. Um, and so this is where our political and social and economic um, ideas and practices come from. Is this relationship of like what is the status quo and what is not status quo? What is orbiting the status quo? What could potentially destroy the status quo? And how do we harness those voices to achieve our means and goals?
Okay, again, I'm hearing a lot of this Leo Aquarius just coming right through. And, you know, I'm someone who was born, I have a moon in Scorpio. It's a full moon in Scorpio and it's conjunct Black Moon Lilith. And that usually denotes that means that the moon was at its apogee from the earth. It's its farthest point. And so I've always had a thing for that word. And so when when Apogee came to my attention, I was just really thrilled. And there are some pieces in there that are just very, very interesting. I would like to dig into that some more.
Yeah,
And yeah, and so during our process together over this winter, of course, we talked a little bit about astrology, and you just had there was some language that you used. I'm like, oh, this isn't like just a casual consumer of pop astrology. I remember, I think it was you were like, oh, I'm heading into a 12th house perfection year, and I'm like, oh, this person knows something. And so what can you tell me a little bit about like how you got into astrology or what your relationship with it is?
so I got into astrology as a child in a very casual pop way. As a child, I was obsessed with the periodic table of elements. I was a big science geek. And I was also obsessed with human psychology. My mother had all of her psychology textbooks from college, and I would read them. Um, Primarily because I had such a hard time understanding social dynamics, and I had a really hard time navigating social dynamics and what it meant to be a person among people. So I would read astro columns, and I never really knew what any of it meant. But I liked reading to see how everyone was kind of accommodated for, and was thought through a system. Um, it wasn't until I was in middle school, maybe, that I looked at my natal chart. Maybe it was high school, yeah, because I had like, yeah, my computer. And I remember looking at my natal chart for the first time. And I had no idea what the heck it meant. But I kept reading it over and over and over again. And sometimes things would click and sometimes things like wouldn't click. And then in the last few years, especially, I've come in contact with more and more friends who are very serious about astrology practice. Both Vedic and I guess tropical. And So I really learn from them. I listen to them. And I've always been fascinated by people's birthdays. Like, I love asking people's birthdays, and then I remember their birthdays. And then on their birthdays, I'll be like, hey, it's your birthday. Happy birthday. Birthdays are very important to me. Um, they don't have to be big celebrations if people don't want it. But I do think it's great for us to acknowledge our existence here and our contributions for each other and ourselves. And so in the last few years, I got my first chart reading done in 2020. Um, that was interesting. It was really intense. Like, the Aquarius rising archetype was described to me as like being like the ugly duckling. Like, you're in a pond with all these swans, and you're like, wow, look at all these beautiful swans. And then the swans are like, hey, do you see yourself? And I was like, whoa, okay, that's intense. Um, and I processed some of that. And I've been getting more and more into sort of like my Aries placement. In my birth chart, I have an Aries Mars. And I've been thinking through like my Venus, which is in Cancer. Um, and just sort of trying to figure out like what do all of these modalities mean. I don't always have the most like accurate or studied sort of perspective, but I do like to think through elements, modes, and like how do those elements show up, which feels really related to a periodic table of elements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I know your chart. We've had a consultation, and then preparing for this show, I took a peek at it again. There's a lot of fire in there. So like, yeah, Aries is represented, Leo's represented, and so is Sagittarius. I
Yeah.
think, do you have Saturn in Sagittarius?
I have
Or
Saturn. Yes, I believe so.
and so that would be your chart ruler,
Yeah.
because you're an Aquarius rising. So even, that cool Aquarius rising sign has some fire to it. Um, wow, thank you for sharing that. You know, People, especially young people, I got into astrology when I was really young too. And I have a lot of Aries and I'm a Leo rising. So I find that with especially those fire signs or those signs that point to a lot of um, identity types of things, the self, trying to understand, the self, those people tend to gravitate towards astrology very early because, you don't, it's not just about like, oh, who am I within, a certain context. And that would go back to the Leo Aquarius dynamic again. It's it's the notion of the self, but not in a vacuum.
Exactly.
And that changes all the time. And then you also mentioned something about social dynamics and the way it includes everyone. Again,
Yes.
another very Aquarian thing. Um, like when people like check their horoscopes or they listen to content like this, a lot of people, especially people who consume pop astrology, there's like, oh, I'm going to listen for my sign. And I really encourage people to listen to all of it. Everybody has Leo somewhere in their chart. Everybody has Aquarius somewhere in their chart. We all experience the same things in different ways, in different parts of ourselves, and they change. So, yeah, I love that you brought that up. Um, so let's break open Leo season. We're recording this, by the way, on July 21st at 12:54 p.m. Just a few hours after a very, very intense and very sobering full moon at the anaretic degree of Capricorn, um, conjunct probably right now it is conjunct Pluto at 0 degrees Aquarius. Um, that's very heavy. That's very heavy, very intense. It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks. But back to Leo season. So, yeah, the sun does move into Leo on the 22nd. Leo is ruled by the sun. It's a fixed fire, masculine sign. And so when we're delineating Leo, we look to qualities of the sun. The sun is the ruler of Leo. And so I just jotted down this morning some like keywords and phrases. Most notably, the sun is central, right? It's in the middle of everything. Everything else revolves around it. Um, and in like, you know, there are different signs and different planets that correlate with actual physical parts of the body. With Leo, it's the heart. Again, it's central, and the spine. It's central, like it's the middle of everything. Thinking of the spine of a book, everything plugs into it. Um, and also, what the connotations of the heart and the spine: heart, love, passion, courage. The spine, again, courage, having a backbone, having a core. Um, and if we're going back to the sun, what does the sun do? It radiates. It's its own power source, and it's consistent. The sun doesn't go retrograde. It's not a wandering star. It consistently emits light. It's not the moon reflecting anything. It is its own generative power source, which is another reason why Leo is often talked about in terms of warmth, radiance, emissions, being generous, magnanimous, effusive. And also because of the light, we're also talking about what's visible. We can, use words like, oh, that was illuminated. When something is illuminated, it's like, oh, I saw it. It came into consciousness. That's another sun word, whereas like the moon would be more the subconscious or unconscious. And it's what we pay attention to. It's recognition and recognizing things like performance, presentation, expression. Leo is also our intellectual, biological offspring. It's what comes from us that cannot be replicated by anyone else. It bears our unique stamp. So then we bring in things like children. Um, what else? Yeah, it's how we fix things up to be put on display. Offerings, whether good or bad, there's nothing really ordinary in Leo, even if it's quiet or small. Leo tends to want to live in this more poetic space, the space of story, symbolic meaning. Leo, this is where our storytellers, dramatists, our leaders who have vision that they want to manifest, that's where, they come from. Our last four presidents have all had either a Leo sun or a Leo rising. Americans love their Leos. They love their celebrities. We're going to talk more about celebrity culture in a little bit. I think it's going down. Um, and what else? What else? I'll try to get through this. I also feel that Leos need to inspire and be inspired. It's the world of heroism and paragons and gold standards. And there's a lot more. There's legacy, things like that. All of these archetypes and signs are multivalent, and they have long, long, rich histories that we can draw from. Um, I'm just going to stop there with some Leo delineations. And Joe, what is your experience of Leo, having Leo Sun and a Leo Mercury
Yeah.
in your chart?
So I didn't really feel like a Leo for a long time. I did not understand it. In sort of common discourse, Leos are ego driven and selfish and want the attention and will grab it at any opportunity. And that felt really opposite to what I was actually experiencing. My experience, I often think back to myself as a child. Um, the world was so bright. Like, I remember the light in the world. I remember the shadows. I remember the vibrancy of colors. I remember what people said. I was hungry for life, and I felt myself growing all the time in every situation, good and bad. Um, and also like indifferent. Everything could generate something. I I realized so I have a genetic condition called sickle cell, and one of the hallmarks of sickle cell disease is this thing called a crisis, where basically my blood cells get stuck somewhere and it causes tremendous amounts of pain. And this is my first semester of grad school. And so I have been really thinking about colors and locations and plants. I'm surrounded by so many trees, so many plants. And I realized that every metaphor that I had made for sickle cell involved greenery and plants. Every metaphor I could use to translate pain to other people had to do with growth and roots and buds and peeling open and reaching toward. Um, and I think there's something about plants that we misunderstand, which is that like it seems like it all happens so fast. Maybe it's because like our noticing isn't there, but like the process of plants growing, the process of photosynthesis, it's slow and cellular, and it's reaching towards this really, really bright light. And yeah, I think I've become more comfortable with the Leo identity and the things that you've mentioned earlier. As I got older, I would say right around my Saturn return, it was like, oh, I'm not living in my purpose. I'm not fulfilling my mission. And I think I've always known what my mission is, from like a very young age. Like sixth grade, I read John Steinbeck, Problematic King, but I read Of Mice and Men, and I was like, ooh, that's what I want to do. And I want to be a writer. And I've known that since childhood, and I've worked towards that since childhood. And I spent most of my 20s like in the shadows, really trying to cultivate relationships, trying to strengthen my word, strengthen my craft. I did not seek out attention in any way for real, except in like romantic relationships, and I've rectified a lot of that. But yeah, right around uh my Saturn return, I decided that I needed to get out of these sort of like long-standing relationships that were actually like self-sabotage and really stand in my purpose, which is to write not just for myself, but for others, to express the things that people were thinking and feeling right underneath the surface and just pop them out. Um, and ever since, I felt a lot better about being a Leo. I realized that the warmth and the generosity is self-generated, and for a it's not for people to like me. It's how I relate to myself. When I'm not generous with myself, I can't be generous with others, and I know that. And it has screwed me over in the times when I've been stingy with myself. I've been stingy to others. Um, And I also realized the thing about Leo is that like projection becomes like a real issue, like receiving people's projections, sometimes projecting or like seeing things in others that like may actually be like an internal kind of feeling. And I'm just like thinking about the thing that I said the other day, about like Leos and like theft and like jealousy and envy and how like that can be directed. Um, and the thing about sunlight is that first standing on the earth, it takes about 8 minutes for the sunlight to get to us, and you can still get burned. And getting any closer, someone will get vaporized. And so the energy is really, really, really strong and potent. Um, it's like all other astrological energies, cosmic, and says something about the both like beauty and absolute destruction of the universe as a star.
Mm. Wow, that was beautiful. Yeah, there's a term in astrology for when another planet gets too close to the sun, and it's called combust. So like if you had like Mars combust the sun and they were very close together, that Mars can't function as well because it's like literally getting burned up, or you can't see what, well, in the sky, which is how, ancient astrologers did this. They didn't have, software programs. They would look with the naked eye, and when a planet was too close to the sun, like it just, you can't see it. You can't see what's going on. It's also called under the beams. And so anything that gets too close to the sun, it's not a great condition to be in. But if you're like far enough away and you're getting some of the sun's warmth, tends to be ideal or easier to work with. Um, but what you opened with about like, I do not feel like a Leo. I have so many Leo clients who, when we started working together, like that's the first one because of everything you said. It's like, oh, Leo hogs the spotlight, and it's like all about me and hungry for attention. And yes, when Leo isn't working well. um and per your chart specifically, and I've seen a lot of people who have a similar thing in as you. It's your Sun and Mercury in Leo are in your seventh house, which means they're on the descendant, which means the sun was going down. That's like, we have the ascendant, which AKA the rising sign, what sign was, coming in. And on the descendant, if a planet is there, it's what's setting. So, and it doesn't mean that it's dimmer. It's just shining in a different way. It's shining on different things. And especially if you have stuff going on in that Leo seventh house and your ascendant is Aquarius, there is something going on about shining light on other people, shining light on the environment. And actually, when someone does that, you get fueled. um it's it's a Leo position that gets, and that's another Leo and Sun delineation. It's fuel, it's energy. So there's a paradox here of feeling more like yourself and more energized and more seen when you're shining the light on others or sharing it, or then there's a nice like symbiosis that starts to happen, that's very natural. And this is true. I know a lot, like I have Leo rising, and actually I don't mean to bring this person in, but I kind of do because it's something that's going on in the world. um my chart setup is identical. When I say setup, where the angles are, ascendant, descendant, midheaven, IC, to Donald Trump. We are very different people. Like he has a 29-degree and like 50 something minute Leo ascendant, and I do too. Very different people, but for all I know, our experiences might be the same. With me, Leo rising, um, I expect to be central. I expect to get attention, and I do crave it. And I have a bit of an issue with recognition and attention, in that it never really feels like enough. There's that hunger there. I think I manage it better than Donald Trump does. I hope so. I think so. But it's about the experience, because objectively, who knows and who cares? I have friends who tell me it's like, yeah, you don't get enough as much visibility as you should. And I have other friends like, what are you talking about? You're seeing plenty. You get plenty. And it doesn't matter. I think my experience will always be, I want more, 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 more. Um, and so if, I'm not central, which I'm not always central, I'm in Aquarian spaces, it's a little uncomfortable. Um, I'm not gonna like try to maneuver a situation so that I do become central, but it's an awkward learning curve that I can do, like you said, if I'm like really well resourced. If I'm really well resourced and I'm like just really passionate and loving what I'm doing, and make sure that I'm doing that for me, I don't have to be central to feel like I can still generate. I think, yeah, we can all generate without being central. And I think that the current mundane astrology, which is like what's happening to all of us transit wise, we are all going to have to learn how to do that.
Yeah. Similarly, Barack Barack Obama and I have rather similar placements. I haven't looked at the angles. I don't really know how to read angles, but um I think about this all the time. I jokingly say like that's exactly what I don't do. Oops, that's weird. um yeah, it's the thing that I don't want to do. But there are also lessons there on sort of like packaging that I think I've learned. Or yeah, I'm in a position where like I'm really feeling sort of that I need to urgently sort of, and I don't like working in urgency. Urgency is not my go-to. I'm kind of like, if I can keep the fire going for a long time, that's really where I want to be. But I am having this like moment where I'm like, oh no, I need to say more. I need to be a little more central. I need to like I love the periphery, and there's something even about my nickname that has to do with periphery. So my name is Joselia, but I go by Joe, mostly because of the like phrases like cup of Joe or average Joe. Um, the way that I like operate in the world is very like you might have seen me, but you might not have. And like I really like that kind of position of anonymity.
Mhm.
But I also know that like I'm creating work that people need. And if we are to be successful in our endeavors of creating a different world and a different system of relation that acknowledges life as central and not death as this thing that needs to be activated and done onto others, then I need to contribute to that building. I need to contribute quite rigorously. So I'm trying to like move myself around and figure out, okay, how can I get these books out? How can I get these thoughts out? How can I like collaborate and move with others to build something? The destruction is already happening. The destruction has already happened, right? We're just like watching, it's just like a slow motion of the thing that already happened, and sometimes a fast motion of the things that already happened. The world has ended many, many, many times and continues to end many, many, many times. So, how are we building? Relationships, art, food systems, housing, care, healthcare, love. How are we building into that? And that feels really, really, really like active right now. And maybe it's because like I just got out of my 12th house perfection, and honestly, horrible, horrible, terrible. Wow, worst year, horrible. Gutter, in the trash.
So sorry.
I was gagged. I was gagged like literally a month after I turned 35. Poof, it was like punch, punch, punch. And like my 12th house perfection is in Capricorn. Yikes. Yikes. And I've been terrorized by Capricorns my entire life. You know what I mean? Like, mother's a Capricorn, father's a Capricorn, childhood best friend was a Capricorn, childhood best friend's mother was a Capricorn. Like, it was from all sides. And like, in the this past winter, I had access to a studio for the first time due to a really brilliant artist, Helena KK Brown. And I was sitting in that studio painting on wood panels in silence, just silence. I wouldn't talk to people for hours. I had a whole routine. I just sit and be like, what is my life? What are my responsibilities? What am I supposed to be doing? Who am I in the us? And once I figure that out, what are we going to do? And now it's like, my birthday's in 2 weeks. I'm feeling jazzed, and yeah, I'm very ready to sort of harness some of the energy of my birthday in this first house perfection year, and to really revamp a lot of the things that have unsettled me, to show who I am becoming. I'm really interested in this becoming, this changing. I'm characterized by a lot of fixity, like my jewelry, for instance, or my haircut, or I like wearing hats. Um, there are things about me that like will always be true, but there are also parts of me that are changing so quickly, and I'm learning how to embrace them as like not false or artifice, but as like a real articulation of what we are all experiencing. And as long as I can be true to that change, I can be true in my work.
Well, so you have a birthday coming up.
Yep.
That means you're moving into a first house perfection year.
Yep.
And so once you have your birthday, you're going to be in a first house perfection. And that first house is getting, has Pluto. Like it's within, I forget if you're like a 2-degree Aquarius ascendant or something. It's basically there. And it was there, last year. That's also going to be part of your solar return this year. And
Yeah.
like Pluto gets a bad rap. Pluto's tough. It's the lord. It's only the lord of the underworld. Um, but it speaks to like a major transformation, metamorphosis, all those types of words where it's not just that you're gonna get a new hairdo and maybe change your job. Like this is a like soul deep turning inside out. Like it's I know I probably talked about the chrysalis a million times, but it's just such a good example of how thorough Pluto is. Like in that chrysalis, that caterpillar liquefies. Like it's literally its guts turn to liquid and it's just eyeballs. And it takes time for it to form into something else before it breaks out of the chrysalis. And you can't interrupt that process. If you like try to stop it or open it up, you can mess up the whole thing. And you really just have to go through it. It's a full change, and it's right there on your ascendant. It's going to be going through your first house, and Pluto, it does that, but it's also it's indicative of like the deepest sources of power that aren't seen. And when you think about, what power really is, like real power, it's not all the shit that people are doing out there right now that's super obvious, whatever they're speaking, whatever they're doing. The real power in this world is so powerful because you cannot see it and you can maybe even name it. And it's like going into those places and sourcing that power for yourself. Like holy shit. And like this is happening opposite your sun. This is the yeah, that's it's exciting. And for luckily you have this amazing art practice, writing practice that can go into this might, and like we talked a little bit or a
Mhm.
lot a
Mhm.
couple of days ago, like this might be the most important like art making time, or one of the most important art making times of your life, where you're going to be shown things that you wouldn't be able to see at other points in time. These are like deep hidden wells of resources and power. So it's exciting, but a lot.
Yeah, I've just accepted that everything is a lot all the time, right? It's a lot all the time, or it's nothing all the time, and they're the same thing.
Absolutely.
It's,
uh,
you know, I love this image of the chrysalis because recently in a workshop we had 45 minutes to just like write something, and I wrote the prompt that I chose was like write a poet's novel in a microfiction. And so it was a mind bender. And like my homegirl had texted me when I was supposed to be writing and she was going through it. And I was like, okay, it's more important to talk to my homegirl right now before writing anything. So I talked to her for a while. So I only wrote for like 25 minutes. And I ended up writing this very short piece called On Grass and Being about the people who live under the surface, and they pop their eyes out to jump out the grass and scare the people on the surface and let them know, hey, don't talk about us like that.
oh shit. You scared me. Ew.
And I also recently started writing philosophy, which I've been wanting to do since I was a kid. Since I was a teenager, I was like, how sick would it be to be a philosopher? That'd be fun. We're all philosophers. Okay. But I could never find the form. And I didn't like how a lot of philosophy was written because it's just so inaccessible. Like, ugh.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I've been writing two novels at the same time, which is like a lot. Um, but I also started writing this kind of hybrid philosophy theory memoir type thing, which is using informal vernacular to talk about philosophical concepts. Meanwhile, the novels are very academic. And that inversion feels really important in terms of highlighting where lack of access occurs, and to sort of make comments on market, expectations of gender and race, class, educational attainment. And yeah, yeah,
So one of the many things you do is you do access work.
yes.
Not I don't think everybody is familiar with that term
Mhm.
or what that work is. Could you tell us about what you do with
So,
that?
yeah, so access work is like, I think about access in three ways. Like, it's a three-pronged system. Institutionally, access work is, how do we allow disabled body, mind, spirits into space? And how do we accommodate disabled body, mind, spirits in space? And I think that's fine, but it doesn't go far enough because we're not thinking through the fact that like being disabled is not a separate human experience. It's not like there's normal human and then disabled human. It's just human. So the way that I approach access is, how do we get to be people together? And the first step for me is, how do we get in? And that's asking questions like, do we want to get in? What do we need? Do we need interpreters? Do we need captions? Do we need breaks? Do we need ramps? Um, those kinds of questions. Really trying to figure out who is there, what they need, what they want, and then trying to meet those needs and wants so that we can get to step two. Step two is the sort of cohabitation or attendance. How do we attend together? Meaning, how can we show up as ourselves? How can we articulate those things? How do we plan together? How do we break from each other? How do we do or activate together? And sometimes you have to switch between one and two, like pretty often to get it, to get the tuning in a way that everyone feels good about, or at least feels like something is generated other than hardship. Um, conflict will be there. Conflict is not avoidable. But how do we do conflict is the question. Um, this is a really, my access work is a really question heavy process. And then the third step is disembarkation, or how do we get out? So like, is there a window, a trap door? Is there just no wall at all? And it's important to kind of have this like aftercare, or I don't even want to call it aftercare. I just want to say it's care, this continuation of care even after we leave. Because that gives people the ability to come back, and it gives them the ability to like be with themselves and be with other people without this like intense judgment. So like that's like my theory on access. And then there's like this other part where the work I actually do is like I write descriptions. Like I am a describer. So like if you're a dancer, a visual artist, a filmmaker, I'm the person that's sitting there saying what's going on. And the thing about saying what's going on, it has nothing to do with like actually seeing it. Because the thing is, none of us see the same thing the same way. There could be a red folder in front of us, but one person might think it's a folder, another person might think it's a painting, another person might think it's a film, you know, like it could be anything. And so my role as a describer is to make the anything possible and to present it as a possibility, and that so that people who have disabilities and disabled people, as well as everyone else, whether they're familiar or not familiar, right? Like that people can show up to the work and have an experience that is not rooted in like institutional language and all of this blah 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 that tries to separate us from the things that we create. I try to use language to bring us closer together.
I love that. I just started doing some audio description myself. And I spent many years as a dance critic. And I'm gonna bring Leo and Aquarius into this somehow. But the way I wrote criticism, I wanted the writing to be able to stand on its own as a piece of writing that could be experienced. I thought it was really pointless to talk about, like, give a play by play of this happened and then this happened and this is what it looked like and this was good and this was bad, that getting away from that type of thing, and really stick to trying to communicate an experience I had. And then if that experience sounded interesting to anybody, maybe they would want to go and experience it for themselves instead of, that very commodified, this is worth seeing, this is not worth seeing. Um, yeah. And so where Aquarius and Leo comes into that, and even like doing audio description, is it takes, especially doing audio description like you were just speaking of it, something that lets someone, a sighted person who can hear just fine, who can get into theater spaces really easily, it would just be just as valuable to them as someone who had problems seeing, problems hearing, needed to sit further away for some reason. Um, Often, and I think this is one of those things that really needs to be shook loose. When I think of Leo, I think of like some kind of gold standard, because even like this, the sun in astrology represents like an ideal that, it's like our North Star. It's like how we orient ourselves in our lives. Where are we getting energy from? What do we want to give energy to? How do we see our lives? But that kind of thing used in an unhealthy way, it's like certain people get to name what this gold standard is that we're all supposed to measure ourselves against. And only actually a very small amount of people have a shot at meeting this gold standard that's invented by, you know, Leo's the sign of royalty. It's the sign of the elite. It's the sign of empire. um, it's not meant to be equal. It is hierarchical. It is central. Um, and so when we communicate things, when we describe things, especially like in the realm of like performing arts, to communicate that in ways that absolutely everybody has access to and can also be in relationship in whatever way they want to, is you know true democratization, um, if such a thing can happen. It's closer to that.
Yeah. This gold standard has been something that's like haunted me my entire life. Like gold standards, as I'm sure it's haunted many people. My background is one of displacement and colonization. My mother was born a British subject in Jamaica, and I was born an American citizen, a free American citizen, technically. We can get into the nitty-gritty of that later. Um, and so all of these hauntings of empire, all of the everyday spookies of empire, constantly percolate in me. And I'm thinking through, like, okay, what is my relationship to it? Sabotage, not subversion. I do not want to subvert empire. That is covert intent, right? Like it's something that is hidden. Sabotage is like outright, I don't fuck with it, peace. Or not peace for real, you know? And so something that like I think about a lot is that when I was a kid, I wanted to be a nun too. Like, and it got really intense in my 20s. Like I seriously considered becoming a nun, and I actually still want to become a nun. And it might be something that I do much later in life. But I also know that like do I can't contribute to the we of us there quite yet. Um and I think about like if if we are to seize our power back and then create communities and systems that are culturally and regionally specific, that are not authoritarian, that are fundamentally anti-fascist, fundamentally anti-empire, fundamentally anti-racist, fundamentally anti-patriarchal, et cetera, then I can do the thing that I've always wanted to do, which is be a novice under a tree. Um, and have friends. And sometimes, they come to the tree or I go to their trees and we sit together and we marvel and we have wonder and we have this fleeting thing called life, but we have each other. And like, that's what I'm hoping Leos and Aquarians and our axis can think about together is not a utopia. It is not a utopia because a utopia is like another kind of fascist ideal, you know? Utopias require the exclusion. I'm thinking about something far more inclusive, something where nobody ever has to feel like a mistake.
Mm. Damn. Damn. That was good. Yeah, like literally, I think the origins of the word utopia is nowhere because it doesn't exist. And again, it's here we with this like ideal mind of whoever gets to dream up this utopia, this land of perfection. Um, yeah, I want to have my tree and be. I have a friend who just recently got divorced. She's an artist from like a really long marriage. She's like, I'm not going to date anymore. I'm going to be an art nun, and I'm just going to marry my art. And then she changed it from art nun to art ninja. All right, like, but anyway, but like I understand. I understand. I want to say a couple more things about Leo before we talk about a little more Leo Aquarius types of things. And another thing, people who I talk to who are they're like, oh, like I don't understand how I'm a Leo. I don't feel like that. And I don't want attention. I want to hide. I want to be in the background. But both people who are like who am I to say that, and I don't want it, and oh my god, if I say the wrong thing, everything's gonna like I don't know what, like explode. And the similarity between the people who are like, look at me, I like have the most important thing to say is this exaggerated self-importance. So even the people who are super shy and like, if oh my god, if I say the wrong thing, and everyone's going to think this of me and that of me, it's like you're still you think you're that important because on like as we people, whether they love you or hate you, they're probably going to forget most of what you did in a couple days and move on to the next thing. And they're also thinking, what are people thinking of me? And it's you're not you're not understanding that you are just like one expression, you're part of a whole, like that, like what I do is gonna like change things or be so important means that you're misunderstanding. You think you're separate, and like
Yeah.
there's you and then everyone else, which is a And that's not a useful place to work in that Leo Aquarius axis. So like I just want to give a shout out because I talk about that a lot when they're like, I don't want any attention. Like that's horrible. It's like, no, it's not horrible. You're supposed to express because you're part of, we need that expression, and it needs to be an authentic expression and not one based on, this is another Leo thing. It's like, okay, what can I do to get them to like me? And that's when we're stingy. We're not sharing authentically. We want something, we want to be sourced by other people. It's like, if I can get their attention and they like what I do, then I'll feel like generous and want to share. And it doesn't, the sun isn't dependent on anybody. um so something to think about if you're, of the Leo orientation and you're like, I don't, it's like you are supposed to share, but you might not feel like you need to be the most important person in the room, but that's not really um a great expression of Leo. So don't worry about it. Like, think about what gets you going. Like, what are you passionate about? That's how Leo builds its energy. And then and then the cup overflows. And then here we get this generosity. And then it gets mirrored back. And then we get into that nice symbiosis. Um, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking of the process of like thermonuclear fusion or thermonuclear synthesis. And that's something that I think is really important for like everyone to understand. It's like I like almost don't want to say what it is because I want people to be kind of confused. And like if they don't get it, they don't get it, but that's cool because like not getting it is also getting it in a way. Um like I like to think about sort of like self-knowledge or education as not something to capture. It's not like we're like trying to capture the thing and it's ours and we get to hold it and we put it in our little bags and like no, it's like it's being confused, it's being confronted with paradox, it's like not caring, it's caring, it's all of it. All of that is information. And yeah, what you're saying about this, like, I don't want to be seen, I don't want to be perceived. This is like a very like common internet thing. And people think they're joking, but like I lived through the early aughts as like in my 20s. Okay. Like I saw it. I saw the hipsterisms. Like, I don't care, but like it was so they cared so much. They just cared so much. Like they had to listen to the right music and wear the right outfitters and go to the right party. And like I had to have the right glasses. And it was actually quite fascist. And so like I just want to point out that like I agree completely. Do you sincerely, fiercely, do you? Because like you have the once in a lifetime opportunity to be yourself. Holy crap. That's it. That's ill. Like you get the once in a lifetime opportunity to be yourself. And things may not be perfect. Things may be actually like horrible, unconscionable. Things may happen to you that deserve the destruction of the people who cause that harm. And in concert with, you have your own self. Share it, give it to you, to others, to the sky, to the trees, to the deer that hop on by. That's cool.
Yeah. And that's Leo. Um, and Leo also, just like one more note on that, just to say these words. Um, from Leo people, they're the ones who use this phrase most often, um, this thing called imposter syndrome. And I think it's because they are both more attuned to what is authentic and real. And they are also highly skilled at presentation and display. So if it's getting twisted in there, they can actually do a really great job of giving everybody what they think everybody wants and giving people something to consume. And then here we go back with the depletion. And it's not. And so when I hear people with like heavy Leo placements, and they say, oh, I'm having imposter syndrome. This is me. This is not me. It's like, that comes again from this, I think, exaggerated self-importance. We need to take the ego is necessary. We live here on Earth. We need the ego to navigate the world and other people. But when we think that whatever ego we've built is who we are, that's when we get into trouble. And if we're using that interface as a way to build identity, we can get into a lot of trouble. And so I love what you were just so beautifully and soulfully saying is you have to tap in, feel you, do you, because even if you're a masterful performer, person who can display and present things in certain ways, 50% of the time at least, people are going to love it and hate it. So why not at least display something authentic? And I know there's rejection, and Leos are typically very sensitive to rejection, but you're going to get the fuel of connecting authentically, which actually is the thing that feeds you, instead of doing this transactional, I'm going to give you something that you can feed on, so then you think that I'm worth something, and that's going to bolster my self-esteem and my ego. And that's just anti-Leo. Actually, it's going to deplete. So yeah,
I've been there. Like, hand to the sky, been there.
oh yeah,
And
totally.
it depletes so profoundly. And what I have found is that self-rejection hurts more than anyone not liking me. That's the part that really stings.
Yeah. And unfortunately, yeah, honestly, I'm still working on that. I think that's going to be something I work on for a very long time, um but I feel like I've come a long way. But that's part of like a Leo complex.
Oh yeah.
I think that's, if you're in the school of Leo, you're learning self value, and all of these, people like Leos are supposed to be, really responsive to praise and flattery, and oh my God, I love it. Of course, it feels really good. But that's not the actual school of Leo. It's that, I don't want to sound trite, but self-love and self-adoration, and allowing yourself to indulge in everything that turns you on. Leo has associations with the fifth house, and that's like the house of Eros and sex and romance. It's about, and here we go with the light again, it's about getting turned on, like by everything you love. the people you love, the things that you're doing. And then we have this like strong radiance, ideally, for Leo. But
Yeah.
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 Okay. I'm gonna rattle off here some Leo Aquarius opposition stuff. And I just want to say oppositions, it doesn't mean like you are like, that is not me, that's different from me, or these two things are like, even though we have the word opposed, when we have something on an axis, they're just 2 points on a spectrum, and they contain that spectrum. So they're one thing, actually. And then things move on that spectrum. Okay, so Leo Aquarius. Leo, the heart, Aquarius, the intellect, Leo, subjectivity, objectivity. Keep thinking of spectrums. The personal and individual, and the network, the masses. Leo, the regal, the royal, Aquarius, the humble, the proletariat. Leo, the messy human drama, and Aquarius, the scientifically precise. Leo, the close and the intimate, and Aquarius, the distant and untouchable, or if you think of like central and distal. Um, yeah, center of the circle, the perimeter. We talked about that. And in the drama of life, the lead protagonists and the marginal or the marginalized. Um, I feel like we talked a lot about, I feel like our whole conversation was already very Leo Aquarius. We've expressed that. Um, yeah, do you have any other things to say about that spectrum?
I think it's important to understand spectrums, like generally. Like light operates on a spectrum, ability operates on a spectrum, power operates on a spectrum. Spectrums characterize being, honestly. Like, and I am always thinking about my big three, which Leo Sun, Gemini Moon, Aquarius rising. And that Gemini moon does a lot. Like I feel it in the mutable kind of like the turning. And so I never really feel too stuck in either Leo or Aquarius, or like I finally got to the point where I can understand that they have a deeply symbiotic relationship. And if one is living well, the other one is probably living well. If one's living poorly, the other one's probably living poorly. And to like navigate using them as friends. And like sometimes friends fight, you know? Like sometimes friends are on the outs. Um, Sometimes friends don't know how to communicate at a certain point. Um, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to stop being friends. And so I like to think I feel quite blessed by these placements, honestly. Like it's like the more and more I think about it, the more and more I do them, um, the more I'm realizing like, yeah, like I do have a tremendous self-generating situation. Like I just have a ton of energy. And if and the Aquarius lets me know where to direct it. Like if I just used all my energy and I was just like, like it's radiation, just like, that can get really overwhelming. I could like go places I'm not supposed to go. I could like, because there's no discrimination of light, right? Like when the sun is shining, it's shining. Even if clouds are occluding it, even if the sun is low, the light is still there. And what I feel like Aquarius does for me is be like, okay, but where do you want to shine hot? Where do you want to shine cool? Where do you want to? It gives me placement. It's a locational question. It helps me understand proximity, precarity. Um, I'm really not of the mind that like I want to be a voice to the voiceless because I think that's like a bullshit concept. Like, everyone has something to contribute. Like, there's like how dare that audacity, the audacity, to think like, yes, I'm the sole whatever. Um, but I think that like being on this axis lets me know like which communities am I a part of? Which communities would I like to be a part of? Who do I love with? Who am I loving alongside? And I'm very love based, like not like, oh, romantic nuclear family love, but like actual, just sort of like the ineffable, that thing that helps people light up and cool down. Um, and so, yeah, I guess that's all I have to say about it. Like, it's just sort of like, eh, like it's like scientific, like I started kind of talking about science, like I'm really into math. Like it's kind of scary, honestly, because like I can't do math. I can do basic math. I can do basic sort of like algorithms. A basic algorithm, 5 + 2 = 7. Cool. But I love abstract mathematics. And I love it because it's trying to visualize an experience. And I love science because it's trying to interrogate an experience. I'm not so sure that like I even believe in facts, right? Like I think there are things that hold true for a long time, but anything could come and sort of disrupt that. So my business is more in that which holds true. Um, but science and math can provide us with like really beautiful and like resonant and helpful metaphors to think through how we are and how we can be or are becoming. And it's also like a really awesome place to think through the ways that various oppressions are codified. Like it is incredibly important to understand that like when we're talking about social sciences, we're also talking about a calculus, and we're also talking about various kinds of science that are either created or activated to justify social harm. And so I think it's like pretty important to hold both this kind of like, rooted in people, just like the being spirit of people, and also this thing that is supposed to be so like objective, like it's the subjective and the objective, and it's just balancing them both and being like, okay, how are they in relation? How are they dissimilar? How are they similar? And that level of comparison allows for us to meet somewhere closer to like a center that might be vibrating.
Hmm. I like that. And on that note, I think we've done a really good job
Yeah.
of like really excavating this whole Leo Aquarius situation beautifully. Like the astrologer poet is like an archetype as old as dirt. Like most astrologers were poets, and most poets like were like it's I find it's a really similar practice. You're doing the same type of thing with trying to language things. Um and the deviance of it, which I really like. And you're like a natural, like you are a poet astrologer. Um, so yeah, I think that's a lot for people to chew on. for and like that what you were just speaking, I was just like, whoo, I was like hearing the Aquarius like really coming in. And so now I'm gonna shine a little more light on you. You have a chapbook that's forthcoming called in all caps, I need fucking space like fuck. Now that's like the most Aquarian thing I've heard in this conversation, actually. And you said a lot of Aquarian things. What's that? And I want to get it. What's going on with that book?
So like I wrote a I wrote a manuscript in 2020 and I've been trying to get it published since 2020, but like I don't know. I want to say that people are scared. It gives me jazz to like believe that people don't want to publish this book because it's frightening. Um, Not because like I do anything like really fucked up. It's just like I refuse to veil um tragedy
Mm.
as anything but tragedy. And I refuse to concede to this idea of the poetic as obscure and inaccessible. So, you know, that book, it's just been kind of like sitting in the files. And I was just like, I need to get this book out. Like, I'm trying to rebrand. I like people know me as a poet. And that's really funny because like I've written fiction my entire life. And so when I say like I want to write fiction and people are like, "Oh, have you ever done that?" I'm like, I'm actually a much more skilled fiction writer than I am a poet." And I I'm like a poet dabbler, I would say. Like I mean, I can write a proficient poem. Um, Many people would say that I am being I'm undercutting that. But, I'm in community with some real practitioners. Like I know some deep, deep down, like for centuries kind of poets. And I know we were friends, but I wasn't that. Um, and yeah, so I decided to break up my manuscript blackable into 7 parts. And they all correspond with a color because I love colors. And I Need Fucking Space Like Fuck is the first one. It is red. It was supposed to come out some months ago, but there were just a lot of issues. And me and my friend Justin Moore, who is a typographer, graphic designer, cellist, linguist, translator. I mean, multi-hyphenate, one of my besties. We go way, way back. We decided to go into a publishing endeavor called Boundaries. So it's kind of a joke, it's kind of not. And I Need Fucking Space Like Fuck is what my co-writer and friend and artist writer Dan Shapiro said after I sent him my grad school application. And he was like, they have to accept you because like you need fucking space, like fuck. And I was like, that's the title. And so I would call the chapbook like it's a constellation. It's poems, abstract and concrete, formal and informal. Um, there's a play, there's some short stories. It's really just like a reader. If someone is not familiar with my work, they can really get a good idea of all of the different ways I can express myself and choose to express myself in the places where I find real sort of like theoretical and emotional value. I think my values are really, really well expressed in this text. And I think I've been scared to share my values. And the title does feel like a connection between like, all right, I've been chugging along with my little hat, but now hat's off, mask on, you know what I mean? Um, let's go.
Okay.
Yeah.
And next month, August, you've been working with Kayla Hamilton on a project that's going to be at the Shed in August.
Uh,
Were you
yeah.
a creative consultant, dramaturg on that, or?
Yeah, so Kayla Hamilton is the homie. That's my bestie. She was awarded the Shed open call to new work, real, to make a new work. And we've been collaborating for many years alongside Azure. Oh Lord, don't let me name people and then I'm forgetting people name. This is horrible. There are a lot of collaborators who I cannot name, and I'm so sorry for forgetting this, but I will put it in the bio that I send over later. And so Kayla and I have been working on this over years. It's called How to Bend Down, How to Pick It Up. It is a dance, play, access, dream realized. Um, and I worked as a researcher. I wrote the script, and I've just been like, a creative homie in the situation. I like using the phrase homie. It means to me the spirits that don't haunt. And yeah, Kayla is amazing, and this work is going to be out August 15th, 16th, and 17th, I believe are the dates. Tickets may already be available. They are free. There will be all kinds of access measures. So bring everybody, bring your friends, family, semi-enemies, whatever. Everybody's welcome. And we're really excited to share space with you all.
Yeah. And Kayla Hamilton is another sun in Leo. So like everything with the access, and also, you're doing this presentation, this performance, boom, like there's some Leo Aquarius stuff going on there. And then I sent you an email. Do not
Yeah.
feel pressured if you did not do this. Do you
Yeah.
have any piece of writing to share that you feel is particularly solar, just to wrap things up?
Particularly solar. Okay, okay. Solar, we're talking Leo.
Sure.
Uh,
Leo, the sun, Aquarius, even just
Okay. Yeah,
okay.
here we go.
Hit me.
It's called Point Udall, St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands, May 10th, 2023. An easternmost edge of the U.S. empire transpires in the Caribbean Sea. A lone, broad, black-winged bird circles overhead. A thin murmuration swoops into willowy cotton. Layers of waves too small to ride surge, break against rocky, stretching shore, and again, or for certain, at this culmination or termination of state, I consider, without wearing, I am, without question, impasse or condition, as improbable a being as likely. Together at the end of this world is not as daunting as this world threatens. Water gathers my eyes, another precipitation of hope. The sea, its own strong solution, elsewhere and otherwise, all horizon.
Perfect. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you.
Um, I think this is going to be a real treat for anyone who is listening. Fabulous. And then Joe, you're going to send things over to Mandy, and she'll pop them in our show notes. So if you want to find out more about Joe, any of her projects, yeah, head to the show notes. And I'm gonna be sharing this on social media and
Okay.
all of that good stuff. Um, yeah, so lovely to be with you.
Thank you. This was awesome. Like, I'm really happy to do this with you, Corey. Like, you're the best.
Oh, thank you, Joe. And I hope, and I have a feeling, I just have a feeling, we're gonna work on a thing in the future.
Oh, yeah.
I think we're just circling each other way too much.
Happening. It's brewing. It's brewing.
So yeah, so I look forward to that, and I'm gonna try to get my ass to the shed in mid-August. That just sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So excited for you, so excited for Kayla. And yeah, we're gonna leave you here on this full moon Sunday, and I will see you next time.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye bye.